Jason Rantz, Seattle radio talk show host. Let's start there. Jason, what is the real reason that the DA Gascon doesn't push back when something like this happens? This isn't the first time that we've heard criminals sing his praises to their homies.
Yeah, there's a reason you never hear from victims' families praising George Gascon. He is trying to be seen as this hero, as this savior to the criminal community, because he thinks that the criminals are the ones who are the victims of an institutionalized, a system that has institutionalized racism and all this other bigotry that's basically been built into it. I mean, this is the epitome of when we call out CRT, critical race theory. It is a belief that all of these institutions were founded on white supremacy. And the reason why we call it out is because of policies like what Gascon is trying to either implement or has already implemented. They are dismantling the criminal justice system because they believe it is inherently racist and filled with white supremacist influence. And so now they're going to side with the criminals instead of the victims of those criminals because they've got everything mixed up, and it's all done on purpose. It's ideological.
So what makes anybody think that the guy that we just heard from prison saying, hey, fool, you know, they're going to drop, basically what they're doing is they're lowering the bar on all of his charges. Like, I won't get that 10 years gang penalty because they're going to wipe that away, fool. Not you, but that's what he calls his peeps. Why doesn't anybody think that he's not going to go out and do the same thing again? Like, who is Gascon actually saving? Because it wouldn't be the rest of us. It's not the citizens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they keep saying that, you know, the only way to truly reform these folks is to do it outside of prison. They actually believe that if you put them into restorative justice programs, if you give them community support, that they're suddenly going to change the path that they've been down. But there are so many criminals who are so far gone that the only thing that we can do is keep them in prison because it's not worth the risk of them reoffending and hurting and or killing other people in society. I am all for reform in cases where it makes sense. But if you've got someone who is paying this close attention to the policies that have been implemented as a criminal and saying, ooh, these actually benefit me, that is the hint that they're going to reoffend. If the bad guys are supporting you and the job you're doing as DA, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, it's not a hint, right, Jason? That's a signpost. That's in crayon on the wall. Hey, look, I want to go back to our reporting just now from William LaJeunesse and just hit this one point. And I wonder how the woke folk will sell this. That's my big question. Because the people that they thought that they were listening to in the streets, when that mantra came into politics, defund the police among Democrats, now has backfired. Because now new studies are showing that the majority of communities that were hurt in the process of them defunding were black and diverse communities. Your take?
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about this at the beginning, everyone was pointing out the data does not suggest that the cops are the ones who are the danger to these minority communities. The data never suggested that. And so it makes total sense that when you pull the people who are protecting communities out of the communities, the people who live there are going to be, they're going to basically have a disproportionate share of the crime being hit against them. And we get told all the time by folks on the left that anytime there's some sort of disproportionality that impacts people of color, they say, well, that's racist. That means we have to get rid of this policy. Okay, well, then use your own argument, folks on the left. Your policies are hurting the people that you pretend to care about the most. And if you actually cared about them, you would bring police officers back into the community, embrace proactive community policing so that you can actually have a good sort of a representation there of people who actually want to support law and order so that you are not constantly falling victim. This is not rocket science. This is actually pretty basic. What Bill Barr said the other day is a perfect, it is a nonstop cycle. You're getting these people, you're putting them back out onto the streets, and they're recommitting, and no one is saying anything in the communities that are hurt the most.
What you're talking about, too, Jason, and I've heard you say it before, it's so important, relationship building and ownership for both sides. Yes, the criminals and the police wanting to stay because they feel honored and revered, and they feel protected, if you will, to do their jobs. And then those communities that really do need the extra protection. Because as you say, that the greatest threat has never been men in blue. It's crime. All right, I want to get to this. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis defending the state's decision to reject dozens of math textbooks. He says they push certain inappropriate topics, including critical race theory, which you just mentioned. Florida Democrats are demanding to see examples of the CRT in these textbooks. DeSantis so far, though, has said he set up a review, but otherwise he's not budging.
You do have things like social and emotional learning and some of the other things that are more political in there. In our view on something like math, first, it doesn't meet the standards. But second, math is about getting the right answer. And we want kids to learn to think so they get the right answer. We're going to continue to focus the education on the actual strong academic performance of the students. We don't want things like math to have, some of these other concepts introduced.
Not that it was anybody's intention, but they do need to come up with some examples on this. And I know the governor says that they are reviewing it. You, Jason, have given one of the best explanations of the tie between math and CRT as part of this argument.
Yeah, they're basically saying folks who are, call themselves anti-racist activists, they claim that white supremacy infects math because perfection, the concept or the characteristic of perfection, is an example of white supremacy. And so when you look at math, you have correct answers and incorrect answers. And so when you're being told that an answer might not be correct, well, that somehow, in the twisted view of folks who are far to the left, they say that that is white supremacy. I did a story actually last year. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation ended up bankrolling some group that claims the idea of math being purely objective is unequivocally false. And so this is what we're seeing, and it's not just in Florida. It's been happening here on the West Coast, in particular Washington and Oregon, for quite some time.
Wow. I mean, we just learned that, pi is not negotiable. 314. I don't know how they hope to negotiate it. All right, we will follow this because we know that parents have a big voice down in Florida, Virginia. We're watching this in other states, New Jersey, so on and so forth. And we're watching you for all you do. Jason Rantz, thank you.
Thanks, Harris.